Hello guys, this is Sebastian, aka Microstakes for PokerVIP.com, and today I'm back with the second part of this month's TonyBet video series, and this will be a bit of a special part as announced. As you can see, I'm not holding 2 cards, but I'm holding 4 cards. So I'm gonna play the great game of Pot Limit Omaha. If I did that impression somewhat accurately. And yeah. As a little introduction, when I'm already in a hand, so we do flop bottom pair and the nut flush draw and the gut shot, and we obviously have like a pretty big range advantage on this spot, given no one of these guys will ever have aces, and rarely like a hand like ace king king. So with my I'm gonna just bet pot and commit to the hand, and if someone wants to go with it, sure, we do turn the nuts, that's always great. Given we do have the blocker to a board pair, so we do block potential board pair outs, and we do have the spades covered as well, we don't necessarily need to bet that big here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bet around 2/3 of the pot, trying to widen his calling range, and we still hold the nuts, and he probably can't really have the nuts. So this is pretty great, especially because we don't have a lot of money left on river, making it more likely he's gonna hero call with a hand like, let's say, kings. Maybe he river the backdoor straight like 6-7 or like jack-7. So we are gonna shove our hand in after fake tanking for a bit. This guy was also tagged as recreational, so I wouldn't be surprised if he can't fold kings here. And if he doesn't, we already win a really big pot. So yeah, as a little introduction, I have been studying and playing PLO for quite a while now. I've been putting actually a decent bit of study work into PLO, equally as much as to my holding game. And over the past month, I have been winning at like 25 NL on like numerous sites. So I was playing at PokerStars, I was playing at Microgaming, TonyBet, and Party Poker. And I have been winning at those sites. So we flop top 2 and the nut flush draw. So this will be a spot where we are not gonna bet too big, because we have the board so super crushed that we do want to let them continue with somewhat wideish ranges. So we're just gonna bet roughly around like half pot here, trying to get calls from like a bit of a wider range here, because we have the board just so crushed. We do want hand like ace jack to continue, for example. So yeah, gonna play 2 tables, and yeah, hope we're gonna get into a lot of good spots. Gonna click ready at the second table now and gonna jump into the action, and hopefully you can get something out of my PLO knowledge as well, and hopefully you're interested in it. So pressing, I'm back here and gonna keep on betting around half pot. There's still plenty of value to be gained. There's some protection to be gained from like random gut shots and stuff. Pretty loose open here, but it sets up, so I'm gonna open relatively loose. And the backdoor flush does get in there. We do have the ace of diamonds blocker, which is pretty great. I don't think there really is this would be too thin for a value bet, so we're just gonna check it back. We do probably have the best hand here, but what can really call us here? If we don't know he has the same hand, that makes sense. Could have tried to get him off the same hand, I suppose, but then I'm also supposing that the short stacker is usually just gonna, with the pair and open hand, I'm just gonna check back here and take my equity. I could see bet, but with a pair as well, especially in heads up where the showdown value of the pair definitely increases to a certain amount. Just gonna check down now. Not the best run out. Probably just gonna show down my hand. Not gonna hero call this, and I have plenty of ace-x as well. And like ace-8 would be quite reasonable there for me to have. Anyways, so here we could try to get him off a chop, but I'm assuming the short stacker's then gonna jam the flop with ace-king a lot as well. So yeah, pretty straightforwardly played hand on the left hand table. So we do flop the basically nuts here, second nuts. This is a somewhat interesting spot. There are definitely a lot of like gut shots and so on possible. So we don't want to bet too big. So we do want to make his continuing range wider. So we do want a hand like ace-10 to continue, a hand like jacks to continue. So we're going to bet around half pot to make his continuing range as wide as possible, because we have a lot of hands drawing that. And this is a pretty King 6, 10, 8. This is pretty close. The rake is relatively high here at PLO. I'm gonna throw in the call, but it's relatively close. On the turn, there are plenty of draws that can call us actually, so we're gonna make it a bit bigger. We do want to create a pot as well. There are plenty of good hands that can call here. We're gonna check call here. Probably. He so far did c-bet pot like almost every single time he was involved in the pot, so I don't give that too much credit. But we don't have like the best continue. So what did we flop? We did flop a gut shot, a backdoor flush draw, and a top pair. Pretty weak gut shot to this. He bets relatively large. This is like pretty annoying. Our backdoor flush draw is also not the best one. Like it's not an ace-high backdoor flush draw. I think I'm gonna let this one go and continue a bit of a better hand. Like if I had king jack here, I would continue because I'm actually drawing to the nuts, so my nut potential is actually at least a bit better. Ace jack 9 deuce. In heads up, I'm still gonna open it, but this is pretty marginal. And in a normal button, I probably would not open this, but it wouldn't be that horrible as well. Pretty weak aces. We are also somewhat deep. We can't really push a lot of money into the pot. I think he straddled actually. Did he straddle or did he min raise? I'm not exactly sure whether he straddled or min raised. I want to just click the pot button for what it's worth, but I think flatting here is not outrageous. If I knew the player behind was somewhat loose, I'm going to fold this hand. This is just with the rake, not going to cut it. And on this flop, we're going to c-bet relatively small, just trying to take it down. And if we do face resistance, we're going to let go of our hand. But I think the c-bet will get some folds, and when we get jammed on, pretty easy fold, given we only have aces. Right here, this is like somewhat close. He has way more 6x's than we do. We can c-bet 1/3 or we can check. Yeah, he actually straddled last hand, so I like to raise more knowing he straddled. If he would have min raised, I probably would have just flat it, but given he straddled. I'm actually going to check this bet. C-betting 1/3 would also be an option. Pretty bad turn. Just gonna let this go. He has just plenty more of 6x, and I do expect him to quite aggressively attack this board. Actually, given its heads up, I probably do open a lot of 6x as well, so he might not have as much of a range advantage as like in a 6-max setting. That being said, I don't hate my check back. I don't think betting small there is a mistake though. I'm gonna defend this hand. We do have a reasonably high suit. Here we're gonna fold to the pretty large lead. We have a reasonable high suit. We have somewhat connectivity. Sure, the deuce doesn't do anything, but the other three parts of the hand are good. As some of you might know, when looking at a hand and judging how good a hand is, a pre-flop starting hand, we're looking at three factors, which is connectivity, high cut strength, and suitedness. So in terms of high cut strength, this hand wouldn't really check the box, right? I mean, it only has like 1 or like 1.5 high cuts, so it would be a pretty weak high cut hand. In terms of suitedness, it's like it checks like half the box, not even. Trip kings just gonna fold, even in heads up. 10, 6, 6, 4, double suited is pretty close in the cutoff button. I would always open it. Cutoff, I'm gonna push it towards an open, given there are two weaker players behind. The deuce 6, 5, 8. Given its heads up, I'm gonna assume he's gonna open pretty wide. This is like pretty close. It has the connectivity checked somewhat, like relatively good. The suitedness is pretty bad, and it has no high cut. So this is like not a great hand. It's a pretty weak hand, but I think given its heads up, I can still get away with defending it. But this is certainly like pretty close. Given, so we basically flop the nuts here. We're gonna bet relatively big because our only customer is gonna be a queen. And if someone has a queen, he's not gonna fold. So actually I do think we can just pot it in here. Because if someone has a queen, they are not going to fold. And even if they fold a hand like queen, jack, 10, 9, it would be extremely good for us. And I think our only customer basically is going to be a queen. So I'm just going to shovel the money into the middle. We do flop bottom pair and a gut shot here. Just going to let it go, especially with the pot size bad. Just not a lot. Yeah, and left-hand table, we did just like queen is our basically only customer on that board. There are no draws. So we're just going to pot it and extract the maximum value from a queen. And if the queen ever folds, that's honestly a pretty great result. So this hand is, we do have the ace blocker, which always helps. Because like we're reducing the amount of aces by a lot. Or which reduces the amount we get 3-bet a lot. Because also like some ace king kings we reduce. So I'm going to make the open as a steal in heads up. For a 6-max setting, this would be a bit too loose. Now facing the 3-bet, if I had the nut suit, I would snap call this. Given I don't have the nut suit, this is pretty darn close, I think. As said in 6-max, I would probably not open it and now fold to a 3-bet as well. Given its heads up, it gets a bit closer. I want to still let this one go. The connectivity is pretty weak. There are a lot of gaps in it. The suitedness is pretty weak. Yes, in heads up, it doesn't matter as much that you don't have the nut suit as it would in like a multi-way scenario. This hand will definitely continue. But we do flop the nuts. We're going to check raise. Plenty of draws on the spot. 7-8 gets in there. I'm going to assume he would c-bet a lot of his 7-8, and there's still a lot of draws possible, so we're going to lead this turn. Yes, he could occasionally have 7-8 and razors here, and that's like kind of annoying, but I'm going to assume a lot of his 7-8 combinations would c-bet. Sure, and like 7-8-9 wouldn't, probably, but yeah. This hand, for example, is like relatively good. It checks like a reasonable amount of the box of the high cut strength. The connectivity is relatively okay, not super great. With the king in the small blind, given someone limbed, I'm going to come in here with the double suited king 7-7-10, somewhat loose, but I think reasonable. With a pair, I'm going to just check back, take a free card. We don't have a spade. We don't want to get check raised. We do want to see a turn with our rep. Just going to check fold. Obviously, the left hand table could fold pre. It's not outrageous to fold pre, but it's not that bad to call. Given we don't have any spades in our hand and he's going to have plenty of spades, I actually think this turn is somewhat close, but given we also have the 2-pair backup, so we can even improve versus spades, and we have relatively... I'm going to call in heads up, and then probably fold on the river. So we can improve to a boat, which helps. He could just step air, he could just step a blocker. Now we're going to show down. Hopefully he doesn't have a flush. He doesn't, he just has 2-pair, which seems kind of random. You have the 2-pair, we have a pretty easy fold. Nothing to be said there. So for example, this hand, you can see like on the right hand table is completely garbage. You don't have a high cards. I mean, you have 1 ace. You don't really have connectivity. I mean, you have like wheel connectivity, which is pretty bad in PLO. And you don't have any suits. So I'm actually even in heads up going to fold this. Don't think it cuts it. And you also don't have a high pair. Like high pairs are still relatively strong in PLO. They are definitely nowhere near as strong. Just going to fold this hand. Bit too junky-ish, and gonna open this because it's heads up. So high pairs are not as strong as in hold'em, but they still hold a relatively decent strength. So on the right hand table, we do flop a pretty weak, like a weakish draw. Yes, it's an open ender, but there are hearts on the board, which do reduce the amounts of outs and reduces the amounts of equity. But we don't have a pair, and we don't have showdown value, and we do have the severe range advantage on the spot because we have aces and he basically doesn't. So we're gonna start this off with a c-bet. Going to see it relatively large, trying to apply the maximum pressure. This also enables us to check back turns and realize our equity more smoothly. I don't think we're going to face a ton of check raises on that board, and if we do, we have a relatively easy check fold. Sorry for like speaking so fast, but there's so much happening, and I do want to give you all the value I can. This hand is really junky, so you don't really have connectivity. I mean, you have split connectivity, so you have like one part of your hand is connected, but not even that great. And then you don't, I mean, you have like 3 suits and they're like all really low, and then you don't really have high cards. So I'm just going to throw this into the trash, given rake is pretty high at these stakes. This is pretty, the pocket 8s with the suit I'm going to push towards an open in heads up. So the queen jack now 6-9, you have some sort of connectivity, and you have 1 suit and you have 2 high cards. In button I would slam dunk open this. In cutoff, I'm really only opening it because there are 2 fish behind, and also this guy straddling doesn't seem like the best player. We basically do flop the nuts. Same principle as before, we do want to widen his calling range given we have the board on lockdown. So we're going to see bet half pot instead of bigger. So right here we only do flop, we only flop a gut shot, and a future blocker, and some future straight draws, and some overcards. We're just going to check and try to see a free card. I mean, thinking the 8 would be quite great. We do have the Jack 9 10 7. I could throw in a 3-bet here. I'm not really 3-betting a lot. It's a relatively okay hand to 3-bet, but I would like it to be double suited for that. Or like if the 7 was an 8, I would still 3-bet it, or if it was double suited. Given how the hand actually is, it's a really good hand, but I'm just gonna call basically. And on this board, we're going to see what he does. We might go for a check raise because we have like a lot of like what I call neighbor blockers. You know, we do block a lot of hands in the range of the 8, which reduces the amount of 8x he can have. And we also do block a club. And we have some future like straights. Like we have a lot of actually turns where we do turn a good straight draw. On this turn, I do think he actually has a decent bit of pairs checking back that board. So we're going to check down. And now it gets kind of close. So I don't think he has a good pair at this point. He could station us here with ace highs. But we also still have a lot of pairs here like pocket sixes. Meaning, having no showdown value, I'm going to turn this into a bluff and hope some king highs fold, some queen highs definitely fold, and maybe some ace highs fold. If he has a pair, he's obviously not folding. He does station us with the ace high, which is not that unreasonable. I still do like my bluff there. Because he's always going to fold some jack highs, some queen highs, some king highs. And I think there's a chance he folds some king highs. So here we can either overlimp or just fold. It's not a great spot where I think we're going to complete. Not thrilled. Here we have like somewhat reasonable connectivity. There are a lot of gaps in it, but it's somewhat connected. We have a suit. So let's defend. We do flop bottom 2. Backdoor straight draws, backdoor flush draw. Gonna go for a check call. And here we're gonna go for a check fold with the really weak flush draw. Hoping to see a freak out, of course. He pots it, kind of worries me, but I think we're gonna call. Here blocking the straights pretty hard and having somewhat equity with our flush draw and him checking back. And we also have a gut shot now. I'm gonna go in for the pot size lead. I think some better hands can definitely fold. I think once we get called, I'm just going to give up, especially on the board. I think that reduces the chance of my bluff going through. And we didn't hit. We're just going to give up. He calls us with 7-8, so we've got shot and 7. So 7 speed 5 still, so that's kind of funny. Here he pots again. Yeah, we do turn 3 pair, but it's not enough to continue. We have a pretty easy fold. We have a way better continuous than this. Ace 4, Queen 5 versus a straddle. Being in the button, given there's so much dead money in, I'm gonna raise this up. Yes, it's not a great hand, but it's good enough to attack a straddle. Opening a pretty junky hand on the right, but yeah. We do get to defend from the straddler. We do flop a backdoor flush and a nut gut shot and an overcard. This is going to be a 3-bet on the right hand table, double suited jacks with a king high suit as well. Pretty good hands. If we do face a 4-bet on the right hand table, we're probably just going to fold. Yeah, we're going to face the snap 4-bet. We're just going to check back and realize our equity on the left hand table. It's a pretty okay turn. Hopefully it doesn't lead too big. He doesn't lead at all. Giving me a decision. Here I'm going to just fold to the 4-bet. If I didn't have a pair, I would call. So if the jack was a 10 or a queen, I would definitely peel this. But with the pair, I can't really peel the 4-bet. Not enough equity versus aces. And right here we can either pot it or we don't really rep a lot by potting it. It's kind of face up that we have a draw, but at the same time we can certainly get him off some better hands. We can also just check back and realize our equity. I think I'm going to opt to pot it and hope he just folds some junky type of hands, like some 8. I mean, some pocket 6s can just fold it. So we have a relatively strong hand on the right hand table. It's not, for my taste, it's not strong enough to 3-bet. I would want to have like a 10 here as well. Like instead of the 3 or the 5, I want to have a 10. I could 3-bet, it's not outrageous. I'm going to just go for the flat. Pretty great spot on the left-hand table. We do face a squeeze, we can 4-bet a lot of big blinds in. We do flop the nuts here. It's not a board I want to lead in a heads-up scenario. It looks like a board I want to lead from a holding perspective. From a PLO perspective, it's not that great of a lead. Given our hand, it wouldn't be a bad lead. We don't block any of the spades, so we're going to lead here for relatively big sizing. So here we're going to 4-bet. Hopefully get in with his kings. That's the dream. So we do have a blocker to the nut flush draw. So now this is not a great spot. Once he snap leads it in. But given we do block the nut flush draw, given we have an overpair, given SPR is 1, there's really not a whole lot to do besides just getting it in. I'm not really thrilled about this. We don't really have a lot of ways to improve, but given we only need 33% versus range, we sadly do have to get it in here. And we do have 60%, 81, 100 on the first one. Gonna defend this here, could throw it into a 3-bet. 61, 100, win it twice, ship the money dealer, ship the money. That's a decent pot there. I love PLO. What hand did he show up with? I didn't really look at his hand, I was just looking at the equities. So we do turn we have like a double gut shot type of deal here. We don't have any spade in our hand, but he did check back, so I'm assuming his check back range is actually really attackable here. So I'm gonna bluff this and then probably fire on a non-spade river, because I unblock spades. And basically think once he calls here, he has a decent amount of like pair plus spades. So he had like an open ender on the flop, and I think like a backdoor flush draw type of deal. Yeah, no, I think I actually had a wrap on the flop. So very reasonable by him. So we do river straight, which is pretty great because now we beat some hands like King 10. But he also has a lot of spades because we do unblock spades, and given the hand how he played it, he just is going to end up with a lot of spades here. So we're going to check fold the straight pretty happily. Winning is not like a... It doesn't shock me to win there basically. Double suited junkie fives, good enough to open heads up, but really not a great hand. We do flop the bottom pair, blocking some deuces and queen deuce, generally not the best. We do also have fives, which I'm just gonna see bet 1/3, just gonna probe here. As like a protection realization type of bet. Turning the 5 is really great. This is like a turn where we do now can check back and realize our equity, which is pretty great. We could just check back flop. We could go for a triple barrel on the flop. It's also somewhat reasonable with for like big sizings. We trip aces on the right. But now we're just gonna check back. River the backdoor flush. I actually think given we did see bet 1/3, it will increase the chance he will have the backdoor flush, but it also increases the, like, it also widens his range in a way where yeah, where we basically definitely have to call it 1/3 lead here. And yeah, for example, I don't know what he's doing. Here we're just gonna squeeze it up. Versus the limp and the isolator. I think he's isolating pretty loose. I think he's overall pretty loose. I mean, we have aces still. We're still gonna go in. We have the queens with a suit. I will just call. Okay, we get shoved on. We don't want to get it in three-ways here, so this is not a great spot. But we have aces. We're gonna get it in. We also have a suit. So we block aces, so basically no one of them can have aces. So we're just gonna get it in here. It's not a great spot to get it in three-ways, but we will get it in. Oh, this guy has a really junky hand. This looks good so far. It's not a good turn, but I think it's a good river. I don't know. PLO. Gotta call here, given we have the overpair, given we have the nuts gut shot. Especially with the 1/3 sizing. I mean, that's some decent run good there, my boys. Not gonna lie. What hands did I show up with there? That was some crazy type of deal there. The one guy had like the good old like nothing burger. We do have a pretty good hand here. He could certainly have aces and kings at some frequency, given like how light he bluff catch us when we let the bluff, when he bluff catch us with the aces. I will bet this. I will bet this for a number of reasons, and one reason is if he has aces or kings, he's always going to value bet this river. Hence, we're going to lose because we're going to not check fold. We will check call. Also, we do block kings, and I think there are just a variety of worse hands that can call us. So the one guy had the 9-5 Jack 4 single suited, and the other guy had the 6-6 King Queen single suited. Just gonna see what 1/3 here. Pretty static board. There will be a lot of folds for him. Like if he has some like, gonna open this because those villains definitely seem somewhat bad. Not gonna lie. So yeah, as we just saw on the left hand table, poker and certainly PLO is not bad. Certainly alive. So right hand table, I just step for 1/3. Given we have some backdoors and given it's a pretty static board where a lot of its hands are just kind of forced, like handcuffed to just check fold. And now turning basically top pair, I'm just gonna check down. Just gonna check down, hope to win. Here's an ace. That hand is pretty good. Should probably raise flop at some frequency. We have a gut shot, we have a pair, we have a backdoor flush draw. We're gonna check back and realize. Pretty bad turn. This is the most junky hand I've ever seen on the right hand table. I'm gonna fold. I would rather have king's trips than this hand. Not really sure if that's a true statement, but it's a pretty bad hand. Pretty good hand now, though. Checking back, trying to realize our equity. The question is, can we get him off a jack or a random king? And the answer is, we have extremely poor blockers, but we also don't really have showdown value. And I'm just gonna assume he's checking down pretty. He's a fish. Do I really want to bluff into a fish? Let's try. I mean, he can at least fold in like pocket 7s or pocket 8s, which is a better hand than ours. With the king, 6-6, no suit. With a suit, I would 3-bet this. Without a suit, I'm just gonna go for the... actually, I will... I'm gonna just call, but... So here we do flop an overpair and future blockers and an underpair. I'm probably gonna call one street at least. See what a turn brings. Pretty bad turn. Extremely awful turn. If he checks back, we might even bluff our hand because... I mean, we don't really have to bluff kings and heads up here. What I wanted to say is we might bluff on some rivers like a diamond. That's what I actually wanted to say. Not that we're going to generally bluff there a lot. Not a great hand. Yes, it's connected. It kind of looks good from a hold'em standpoint, but it really isn't because the connectivity is really low and the suit is also really low. But, and now comes the big but, it sets up, so it really changes a lot. So in 6-max, you would be like decently worried to like get straight over straight, making like the bottom end of some straights, right? While in heads up, it's not really that big of a deal because that happens way less because ranges are wider and so on and so on. So basically in heads up, it doesn't matter as much to have like the nut suits or like the nut straight potentials. Yeah, as it matters in 6-max because in 6-max it happens way more frequently that you get straight over flush over flush. Without, like if the 9 was a 10 or an 8 or a 5, I would definitely 3-bet this hand. But given I have a pair, I'm not going to go for a 3-bet because then I can't call a 4-bet. That's one of the reasons why. Another reason is just like it's such a great flatting hand. And on the flop, we do flop a gut shot to the nuts. And a flush draw. We're going to check all. One street. We also have the 9s. On the turn, we do block the nuts. It's pretty hard for him to have the nuts. We have some future blockers blocking like... yeah. We also have an open-ender and a flush draw. This is like, okay, we could lead the hand, but he can still reasonably have aces and like aces with like ace-x with hearts. I'm just gonna check it. This will be a turn where we're gonna face some checkbacks, I would assume. But we face a pretty large bet. This is like somewhat close, I feel now. Given the open-ender and the flush draw, I'm gonna call, but the flush draw is somewhat tainted because ace-x of hearts is possible. The open-ender is pretty live. And there are like some, like maybe the 9 is live, maybe a 6 is live. Stuff like that. So we're gonna call. We don't have a club in our hand. If we had one club in our hand, I would definitely lead. If we have 2 clubs in our hand, I would also definitely lead. Given our hand, we do block some hearts. And yeah, I'm just not gonna lead here. I'm gonna assume he's gonna check back aces a decent bit of the time. I'm gonna lose to that, but we're gonna just suck it up. He also could just have quite reasonably have clubs there. So yeah, not too thrilled with calling turn. Once again, would really prefer this to have the nut suit, but in heads up it doesn't matter as much as in 6-max. I would still prefer to have the nut suit, but it's still somewhat connected. I mean, you have 3 cards directly connected in like a line, and then the ace also has connectivity with the ace with the 4 and the 5. You don't have the high card strength and you don't have a high pair, but you have the connectivity and it's somewhat of a suit. I mean, you have like it's not even checking half the box of the suitedness. The 9s without a suit, given how high the rake is, I think we can just toss it into the muck, but it's certainly like not unreasonable to defend, but honestly we're just trying to flop top set at that point. And oftentimes we're going to flop a middle set, sometimes bottom set, and we're just going to flop a lot of marginals. Pretty clear, we are effectively in a cutoff, not MP. MP I wouldn't open this, probably. Given on some weak tables I might, but cutoff I would definitely open this. Here we have a pretty clear cut check back with our weak flush, and we have a bluff catcher. We allow him to now bluff his blockers. He will have a lot of 1 diamond hands as well, which can now all lead bluff, which are drawing dead. And basically we widen his range to turn a hand like a straight here. We allow him to hit like 2 pair here. And yeah, now we're just gonna call 2 streets down. Gonna call the river as well. Yes, he also can have a variety of better flushes. A variety. He can honestly also have some weaker flushes. There are some weaker flushes in the mix. But there are also like a lot of blockers. His sizing doesn't really look like a blocker. But then again, he has so far shown to do some weird stuff, so I wouldn't be surprised if he even value bets a straight at some frequency. So we're just going to call down on our flush. And we are ahead. And he did have the blocker, and he did make it. He had the blocker and the blocker to the straight, the blocker to the flush. Pretty reasonable bluff by him. The sizing looked pretty valuable, so I'm going to give him credit that he did make it look quite reasonable. Not a great hand, but good enough to defend. We have a relatively reasonable suit, and we have like somewhat of a connectivity. It's really not a good hand, but it's good enough to defend in heads up, where RFIs and VPIPs are generally a decent bit higher. We do flop a pair, bottom pair, and the gotcha to the nuts, and a relatively high flush draw, folding a left-hand table, pretty garbage hand. Yeah, gonna go in for the call. Turn the second nuts. We'll check it to him. Might lead the nuts. Not gonna lead the second nuts. On river, we're gonna certainly lead. I'm gonna, like, versus a straddle and the overlimp versus straddle, I'm gonna isolate my pretty darn good hand. I'm gonna lead relatively high here, trying to get called by like sets straight. Worst flush will obviously always call. So we're hoping to flop something good here. That's a pretty disappointing flop. What we could do is bet. If this was heads up, I would c-bet 1/4 of the pot. Given it's three ways, I'm just gonna dip out of the hand. 7-4. So now this is another situation because we're not in the button anymore. So we're not gonna open as wide from the small blind as we would heads up in the button because we don't have the position. So we're gonna fold this hand. While if it was still heads up, I would open it. Easy fold here. Now we have the ace king deuce 5. Pretty junky hand, but good enough for a button open. Block the aces, block the kings, have a relatively high suit, have 2 high cards, and have somewhat of a junky connectivity. We flop 2 pair. Nothing really else going on. Blocker to the backdoor flush draw. We're basically just gonna c-bet and fold with our 2 pair. And then on the turn we're gonna evaluate what's gonna happen. On some turns we will bet again, on some others we will check back. The king 3 jack 9, relatively connected, not really greatly connected, but like somewhat. Pretty high suit, few high cards, good enough to defend the BB. Not a great spot, but an okay spot. Relatively okay hand on the left-hand table. I would kind of prefer the 8 not to be an 8, but to be rather a 9 or a 10, so not to have the pair. Now the question is, do we want to overlimp and play a really big multi-way pot potentially, or do we want to isolate the UTG limper? I think both are somewhat reasonable. I think isolating is actually not going to achieve a lot, and we're going to be out of position to at least these guys a decent bit. I want to throw in the overlimp. Right-hand table, somewhat connected. Yes, it's 3 to a suit, but it's still a relatively high suit. I'm gonna open, because this guy's also looking somewhat weak. We do flop a pair, gut shot, and a backdoor flush draw. I'm just gonna check fold. I think isolating the left-hand table is not awful, but I also don't think overlimping is awful. I'm not quite certain on the left-hand table what to do there. Just gonna fold this and pretty bad flop, of course, just gonna fold. I think isolating is certainly fine, but you know, overlimping has to be fine as well. Somewhat connected hand. Now I would really now it's starting where I would really want to rather have the nut suit. I still think it's gonna cut it as a button open, barely. I flop a pair. I flop a double gut shot? No, just a gut shot, right? Yeah, just a gut shot to the 8. A pair, a backdoor flush draw. He leads half pot. This is like, I think I want to just fold it. I would start to call with a double gut shot. All my outs are like not nutted. I don't have like any nut turn basically. I have some decent turns, but no nut turn. And I think his leading range is going to be really like pretty good hands. Like really good combo draws, top 2s, 2 pairs, which have been in pretty rough shape. Even the combo draws have been in pretty rough shape here in PLO. Yeah. So now there's no small blind on the left-hand table. Queen 10, 6-3 in position, blind be blind. Pretty marginal hand once again. But given it's blind be blind and we're in position and the guy has shown some pretty weak tendencies, just gonna check here. I will defend this. Barely. I think this is barely a defend. This is barely cutting. I don't think folding would be righteous. We have a pair. We have a gut shot. Let's see a turn. We have 2 pair. Not thrilled if he bets. Probably will call once because he has so far, as said, shown some really left-hand table. We flop a Middle pair and nothing really else going on, so we're just gonna fold. Yes, some backdoor straight draws, and I suppose future really be weak blocker. Just gonna fold it. Calling the 2 pair here with the gut shot, rivering a pretty good hand. Don't really want to bet too big because I don't think he has a lot of spades at all. I think he has some queen X's. I'm just gonna bet around half pot here. I'm gonna hope a hand like ace queen is gonna call me here. Could maybe even bet 1/3. Ace king 10-7 without a suit. 3 high cards, some connectivity, no suit, somewhat marginal hand. Fine to open small blind versus big blind. Flop really good. Not gonna see bet too small here because protection is definitely a thing, and there are a lot of worse hands on the spot that can call us. Hope to not get raised. Getting raised is somewhat iffy because we don't really have backup. Like stacking off here, you want to have some backup. Like if you're 10-7-9-8, you could happily stack off, but we don't. 3 high cards, suited to the king. Yes, it's 3 suits. And blocking an ace and a king. I'm gonna open this in the button, but it's not a great hand. It's not marginal to okay hand. We flop top 2, backdoor flush draw. He will have plenty of more. He will probably have more 4-5s than we do. That being said, protection is definitely a thing here. Gonna bet. Don't think hand like ace queen jack is gonna fold, and I think that's basically our customer here. And we have aces. The bullets. Hoping this guy now calls our 3-bets. 3-bet would be the best for us. We don't have we have a suit, but not a nut suit. Still, I'm gonna opt to 3-bet this. By the way, I just realized the video is already 36 minutes long. Probably will cut it here soon. Hopefully 4-bets. It's the first 3-bet we do, so if he 4-bets, it should be relatively tightish. Interesting board. We do block the nuts, as the nut flush draw. We do block a 4. We have some future straight draws. I'm gonna bet c-bet around 1/3 of the pot. Pretty somewhat not really super static board, but yeah, I think 1/3 is gonna be relatively good here. The 10s with a suit and somewhat connected, and given there are 3 weaker players behind, I'm gonna open from the cutoff. If I get raised here on the right hand table, I probably will just fold. I will just fold. If I get a call, we're gonna evaluate on some turns. Easy fold versus the lead here. Wasn't a loose open to begin with. Gonna probably make this 40 minutes long, so probably go on for another 2 or 3 minutes. Well, I guess I'm gonna just sit out next big blind. At least this. The ace jack 3. We have an ace blocker, which will reduce the amount of 3-bets we're gonna face. Gonna fold this junk in on the right. We don't have a nut suit though, which hurts. I'm gonna make a somewhat tight fold here with the jacks. I would definitely open the cutoff. MP I think is stretching it a bit. With a nut suit I would definitely open. Without it, it's close. It probably doesn't really matter from an EV perspective. There's some weaker players behind, which helps. Probably like I'm somewhat indifferent to opening it or folding it. So we do flop the nut flush draw and some backdoor straight draws. It's a somewhat static board in the way that like our aces are going to be pretty good in this board, so I'm going to c-bet around like 1/3 of the pot again. Yeah. We take it down, that's a pretty good result, so this is going to be our last hand here on the left hand table. I want to play another orbit on the right hand table. Lots to talk about in PLO, I just realized. There's a lot to talk about in PLO. But I think like me talking a lot is good because should mean you can extract a lot of information from it. 7s with the suit, somewhat connected. Not here, not there. Close spot, pre-flop, just gonna open. You will come across a lot of these like close-ish pre-flop spots, which you also do in Hold'em for what it's worth. Okay, we do flop. This is a pretty clear flop spot for what it's worth. It's a pretty clear check back. We have middle pair, middling showdown value. We have a draw. We don't want to get check raised. We do want to see a turn. This is a pretty bad turn for our hand, a pretty good turn for our range. He should not lead this turn. Supposedly we would c-bet some ace, but still. It's still a good turn for our range. If he leads, we have a pretty easy fold. If he doesn't, we could consider to turn our hand into a bluff, but I think there will be a ton of calls by him, and yeah, basically we'll just check down and realize my equity. It's a tiny bit of showdown value. And I basically do want to realize the left of equity I have. River doesn't help our purpose of bluffing our hand, but it helps our showdown value of our hand. I don't expect to win here a lot, but I expect to win sometimes. Enough to not bluff our hand, especially once it checks down. He probably... not sure. Okay, so this was my first PLO video for Poker VIP. I hope it was helpful. I hope you could extract some value out of it. I really love the game. I hope I could basically make you enjoy the game as much as I did. It helps if you hold all your like basically flips or whatever we had. It helps if people stack off preflop with like 6-6 king queen single suited and like jack 4-5 single suited or whatever his end was. Yeah. Hope you liked it. Leave a comment if you liked it or if you didn't like it. Hope you will be back for the next video series. And yeah, hope you're gonna have a great grind. Make sure to check out PLO. Make sure to get your feet wet. I think it's like a really great format. It's a lot of fun, and there are a lot of fish in it. There's a lot of money to be made in it. And yeah, have a nice day. Have a nice grind, and peace.